A choice of president and direction in Indonesia, the world's third largest democracy and the most populous Muslim nation. It's the first time power is being handed directly from one elected president to another. But will it also mark a new era in Indonesian politics? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. It's been a confrontational campaign pitting a wealthy ex-army general against a younger rival, born into poverty. Now voters in Indonesia are waiting to find out who will be their next president. The election is being seen as another step forward for a country that still remembers decades of autocratic rule, a test for the old guard and a challenge for the new. Step Vasson in Jakarta helps get this discussion going.
Jakarta's governor Joko Widodo, or called Jokowi, is celebrating his victory of the presidential election in Indonesia right here at a very symbolic place in Jakarta. It's the place where the founding father of Indonesia, President Sukarno, declared independence from the Dutch nearly 70 years ago. People here are very much convinced that Jokowi is the new president of Indonesia, despite that the result is disputed. Prabowo Subianto, the former general, who was also running against Jokowi, is claiming that he actually won these elections, and he said it's too close to call. He wants to wait until the official result comes out in 2 weeks from now. The same thing is also said by the government, but there's a lot of concern in Jokowi's camp that if they have to wait those 2 weeks, that a lot of fraud could still happen, and the result could be completely different as the result that we have seen today. So it's a very festive mood here in Jakarta, and people are very hopeful that their candidate, the person they think and they say is the man of the people, has won this crucial historical election in Indonesia. Step Vasson, Inside Story in Jakarta.
Well, the two men vying to be president have distinctly different backgrounds and visions. Joko Widodo is governor of Jakarta and seen as a new breed of politician. Prabowo Subianto is a former army general and viewed as a remnant of the old guard. Prabowo is part of Indonesia's political elite and a successful businessman. He was married to the daughter of the long-serving autocrat Suharto, but he's also faced criticism over his record on human rights. Joko, or Jokowi as he is known, has more humble beginnings. He was raised in a bamboo shack in a riverbank slum. As such, he's seen as a man of the people, building on a clean image to campaign against corruption. Well, critics argue that Indonesia's economic potential is being held back by high levels of corruption. Nevertheless, it's still ranked Southeast Asia's largest economy. Gross domestic product is expected to grow 5.7% this year. But about 32 million Indonesians are still living below the poverty line. Well, let's bring in our guests for this Inside Story. In Jakarta, Paul Rowland, an independent consultant and former election observer for the National Democratic Institute. Joining us from Bangkok is Gwen Robinson, a senior fellow at the Institute of Security and International Studies. And also in Jakarta, we have Andreas Harsono, an Indonesia researcher for Human Rights Watch. Welcome to you all. Let's begin with Paul Rowland. The two candidates are, on the face of it, polar opposites in many ways. Your view?
I agree with that assessment. I think Joko Widodo is a very down-to-earth. He's also the first politician to contest for president that isn't a product of the Suharto generation. He is somebody of humble beginnings who built his own business. And Prabowo Subianto, on the other hand, is a former general. He's a former son-in-law of Suharto and a member of the ruling elite for decades.
Well, Gwen Robinson, do you see this as a competition between the old and the new? Is it that clear-cut?
It probably is broadly that, but looking from a regional viewpoint, I think it's also seen as a contest between the kind of outward-looking and inward-looking. It's seen as a battle, really, between a more protectionist, nationalist candidate and one who might be more open to engaging internationally and perhaps projecting Indonesia in a way that is, I think, very necessary to revive a certain amount of regional leadership that the country had in previous years.
Well, Andreas Harsono, certainly there has been an immense energy around this election. It will be a while before the formal result is announced, but definitely an air of great excitement and great energy throughout this balloting process.
Oh yeah, it is. Prabowo has prepared for like 10 years for this campaign, for this presidency. Meanwhile, Jokowi was only establishing his campaign 2 months ago. But of course, this is a very tight competition. People are very passionate. If you read social media, you will see that friends are polarized, regencies, provinces, schools, offices, they are all polarized. So tonight is a very important moment indeed, especially with Prabowo until now still claiming that he is also winning the election. And meanwhile, Jokowi, according to major exit poll, he's the one who win the election.
Well, Paul Rowland, Joko Widodo had a double-digit lead in polling, according to most pollings, a short while ago, and yet this lead has dropped drastically, it would appear, in the immediate run-in to the vote. Why would there be such a drop in his apparent support?
Well, first of all, I mean, for a year, Joko was the uncandidate. He didn't have to answer any questions about his candidacy because he was simply the governor of Jakarta. On the other hand, Prabowo Subianto, as Andreas said, has been preparing for this moment for more than a decade. It's been his full-time job. It's been his only job since ending his time as a general, really. And Joko Widodo has, on the other hand, been governor of Jakarta and has had another job. It's also about tensions within the coalition that was supporting Jokowi, and the fact that they were, I think, unprepared for the level of campaign they were going to get from the Prabowo side.
Well, Andreas Harsono, there were also some dirty tricks, many would claim, allegations, for example, that Joko Widodo was not, in fact, Muslim, just one of the dirty tricks that were played during this campaign.
Oh yeah, there are propaganda sheets being directed against Jokowi, saying that he is not a Muslim, he is a Catholic, he is a Christian Catholic. There are also hate campaigns against him and claiming that he is not Indonesian, he is a Chinese son born out of wedlock from a Chinese Singaporean father. And last but not the least, he is also accused of being a communist. This propaganda sheet was sent to only certain madrasah, Muslim madrasah, in two most contested provinces, East Java and West Java. These are also the two largest in terms of population in Indonesia. So it was quite effective in persuading, in making people believe that Jokowi, what they call is kafir, or kafir is infidel. You know, for Muslim it is haram, it is forbidden to vote for someone claimed to be, accused to be a kafir, an infidel.
Well, Gwen Robinson, for the region as a whole, this whole issue of religion, which has obviously underlies this election, given that that it is the most populous Muslim nation. But this is something that would be watched very carefully in the region, is it not? The potential for a disturbance, the potential for the harmony of the region being affected should religious differences manifest themselves in political ones.
Well, indeed, that's a very good point. What we've had essentially is quite a lot of disturbance in the region at a very critical time for ASEAN anyway. We've had, political upheavals in Cambodia, a coup in Thailand, various other developments around the place, unrest. And the last thing I think any of the regional countries really want to see is, the most populous country, and in fact the most populous Muslim country, subside into unrest. So there is some anxiety about that. I would also say, though, that I think there are big concerns also for what it means for Indonesian leadership. A lot of concern that things get back on track with Indonesia to show a lot more dynamism in the ASEAN context, as I said before. I think also additionally, though, that I found it interesting about the dirty tricks on apparently on one side. All elections have their problems, but what's clear, I think, looking from afar, is that there was also a lot of youth vote in there for Prabowo that wasn't expected. And you're seeing this in the region as well. For example, in Myanmar, also in Thailand, there seems to be a need among youth for strong leadership. They're attracted to strong leaders. So while Jokowi, for example, has a very humane image that does appeal to a lot of people, I think also this kind of hard man approach of Prabowo has drawn the youth, and you're seeing that, as I said, some in places like Thailand, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of that in Myanmar. Actually, a lot of young people have historical amnesia. A lot of these past things, human rights abuses, don't mean a lot to a lot of the young people who are more focused on business. So I think that's an element as well. But the bottom line, I think, amongst all regional governments is this desire for stability, especially amongst the big, important players.
Well, Paul Rowland, this is a very important point, remembering that some 30% of the electorate are voting for the first time. This is this youth vote that we were referring to there. And as Gwen was saying, many observers believe that a substantial part of this youth vote may go to the man seen as more hardline, as part of a previous generation. This is a fascinating scenario, is it not?
Well, it is, but I think you know, when we break down politics anywhere, that age demographics don't vote as an entire block. They may vote a little bit more one way or a little bit more the other way, and there's a lot of diversity within this youth movement. It's also true that a lot of these people were not of age when Suharto was in power, when the regime was dying and the human rights abuses took place. They've never lived or been adults without the benefit of freedom of speech. So that colors the way that one looks at the world. It makes you perhaps more confident on one side, but also perhaps a little bit more naive on the other. I think there's a substantial component that voted for Jokowi. There's a substantial component that voted for Prabowo. I haven't seen the stats yet, but I would expect it's split roughly evenly.
Well, Andreas Harsono, the other portion of the electorate that was fairly high, it would appear, according to polls, was the undecided. The vast group of people who actually had not decided which way they were going to vote until they went in to the voting booth. What do you think would determine the decision at the point of voting, of those who actually had not been going one way or another, but then they've got to make the choice? What would determine that choice?
I think it happened last week on Saturday. It was a very crucial moment when almost 200 music star, pop star, rock star performed in a Jakarta stadium. And I think almost 100,000 people attended that concert. It was not organized by Jokowi, it was organized by the musicians themselves. It was huge and it attracted a lot of attention. And a few hours later, Jokowi was involved in a presidential debate with Prabowo. Most Indonesian media say that Jokowi performed much better than Prabowo. It was the decisive moment. It was when his percentage of voting, according to some pollsters, increased significantly.
Well, Paul Rowland, your view of this, was there in fact what one could call a Nixon moment in this presidential campaign?
Well, it's hard to tell whether it was decisive or not, but certainly the debate on Saturday was crystal clear to me, watching it, having watched all 5 debates, that the Jokowi and Kala team won hands down. They acted as a team during the debate. They drove home their points and actually made a few negative scores on the other side. Prabowo, on the other hand, looked uncharacteristically tired and a little pallid, and was not on his game. It was very much a one-sided affair that evening.
Well, Gwen Robinson, I want to return to something that you touched on a short while ago, and that is the economy. Seen within the region as a whole, the context of the region as a whole, is one candidate better than another in terms of regional economic development?
Well, better is a very subjective word, but speaking strictly from a regional viewpoint, I would say that obviously, you know, clearly the one that would be of greater benefit and help to the region would be a leader who is more open to engaging in trade deals, liberalisation, and that would have to be Jokowi, although one should not kid oneself that he has not espoused some nationalist positions. He's promised, for example, to maintain this tax on raw minerals exports, which I think, you know, ultimately could for a while hurt Indonesia's mining industry and possibly jobs as a result. It is the right instinct. I don't know if Indonesia is quite ready to pull down the shutters on that. There are a host of other difficult trade issues coming up, a lot more trade liberalisation in the region, China, the US pushing for various trade agreements. So overall, I'd say economically speaking, in terms of the region, we're looking at a better show from a liberaliser, someone more prepared to engage with the community. On the other hand, for Indonesia's economy per se, well, again, I would say that a more outward approach, the country has done brilliantly in the last years. It's come to fantastic economic growth compared to where it was 20 years ago. Predictions are for more than 5% growth next year. That's sort of on par. It's not going to go anywhere in leaps and bounds, but that would be a fairly respectable growth, and the stock market has been doing well. The currency's recovered somewhat. So, overall, I would say that a more outward leader could keep things on track. Prabowo's obviously also promised a lot, but he's made it very clear he's got a much more nationalist and therefore protectionist agenda, and it's not really the time or the era to turn inward, and an inward-looking approach may actually have detrimental effects on the economy. This is a very big country with a very big, fast-growing youth population. They need jobs. The country should turn around and try and, boost its exports and reform its economy. There needs to be some very substantial overhaul, and both candidates have acknowledged that. My sense is Jokowi actually has been more articulate on this issue, I think, whereas Prabowo has played heavily on his expertise in defence and security matters.
Well, if I may just go to Andreas Harsono on this particular point. I mean, your view of this, is there a difference in terms of one inward-looking candidate, the other more outward-looking? Would the harmony within the region be better served by the outward-looking view?
Well, it is difficult to say for the time being, because they campaign mostly on domestic issue. But of course, they are worried about the situations in the region. I think at one point they mentioned about the conflict, the tensions in the South China Sea between China, with the Philippines and Vietnam. There are also concerns about Myanmar. At the same time, Jokowi is more concerned about religious freedom. He pays more attention on religious freedom, although he did not mention by name, but of course he was referring to some negative trend in Malaysia and Brunei. Last but not the least, you might know that Prabowo used to live in Bangkok, and I suppose that he also has friends in Bangkok, including in the military. So this is very interesting about what is happening in Thailand with the Thai coup. Myanmar is quite stagnant right now after 3 years, and the conflict in the South China Sea. What I want to say is Indonesia cannot afford to go down, because Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia, and Indonesia is seen as the denominator of Southeast Asia. If Indonesia is going down, if this election is not going to be successful, if there is no peaceful transition of power, I'm afraid it is bad news not only for Indonesia but also for Southeast Asia.
Well, Paul Rowland, this is obviously a critical point. Now, to date, it does appear that this has been a massive success, this election. I mean, you're looking at hundreds of different ethnic groups, hundreds of languages, such a vast amount of people casting their votes, and it has gone very, very well to all intents and purposes. But is there that concern underlying this, that there might be argument about the result?
Oh, absolutely. I think, first of all, you're right. I think that today has gone exceptionally well, according to all reports. But there is a nagging concern among, I think, among Jokowi supporters in particular, that there could be manipulation of the counting process. And I think this is why the Jokowi side was so quick to come out of the box this afternoon with a quick announcement that they believed they had won the election. Try and put that stamp out there so that should there be a different result on the 22nd of July, that they've put the marker out there. I think it is something that we haven't had to deal with in the last 3 elections I've looked at in Indonesia. This is not a point of doubt that has ever existed. So this is a new element in Indonesian politics, but it's also the first time we've seen an election this close for president. It's the first time we've had campaigns this intense and this hotly contested.
Well, also, Gwen Robinson, one cannot state it enough. It's the first time that there has been a handover of power from one civilian authority to another civilian authority. This is an absolutely seminal moment for the country, is it not?
Well, indeed, it is. But I agree with Paul that it depends. If the margin is very close, it's a recipe, I think, for ongoing instability, or at least, serious political tensions. I'd say less than a 5% margin, and big disputes over the election results will linger and will weigh on the country and therefore the region. Either way, even if there is a bigger margin, clearly either candidate is going to have a very splintered parliament on their hands. It will be very difficult to get parliament to do what they want. So we're in for a lot of political jousting anyway, but let's hope the margins is more than 5%.
Well, Andreas Harsono, it is early times there, but that narrowness of margin increasing the tension, are you seeing, does it appear at this particular point that you are going to have a narrow margin of victory one way or another?
Well, tonight, the concerns in Jakarta, and I think also all over Indonesia, is Prabowo also claiming to be the winner of this election. And meanwhile, Jokowi claimed earlier that he was the one who won the election. The margin is about 5%, according to all exit poll, only one. According to all TV stations, but only one. So Prabowo is using the only unusual exit poll to declare that he's the winner. And he's using one TV station to claim that he's the winner. Right now, when we are having this talk at Al Jazeera, this TV station is also doing a lot of things in their studio, claiming from people from one to another, saying that we are prepared to defend this result. Even the word war was already mentioned. So now this is time for especially the winning side to reach out to the losing side. Of course, they need mediators in this case, and to talk about, hey, look, we have to sit down together and we have to resolve these differences. Or at least, please do not increase your language. Please do not use inflammatory language, war, defend our dignity, etc., etc. This is going to create more heated arguments on the street, in Jakarta, in the provinces, in many cities, on social media. You know that this is a polarizing issue right now. It is time to start thinking about reconciliation.
Paul Rowland, very, very quickly, reconciliation. Do you think that these candidates are capable of such thing?
Of course, any candidates are capable of these things. But I think the next 2 weeks are going to be tense as we wait for the official count to come in and see whether it tallies with the majority of the quick counts that have come out in favor, with Jokowi 4 to 5 points ahead.
Well, a tense few weeks. My thanks to our guests, Paul Rowland and Andreas Harsono in Jakarta, and Gwen Robinson in Bangkok. And do please let us know your thoughts. You can leave your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story or go to @AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Hanna. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.